Welcome back to the latest edition of the Whiteout Report podcast. Coming to you on a Thursday night this week to preview Penn State's matchup this Saturday with Michigan State in East Lansing. Marty Leap here along with Dylan Callahan Crawley, excuse me. So yeah, then
We've only been good friends for like a decade, Marty.
Well, I think I just tried to take both last names and cram them into one there, and that's where Crawlahan came from. But no, I apologize for that. But anyway, the Nittany Lions coming off of their best performance in quite a while last Saturday against Indiana, a game that, quite honestly, they should have won. If they played that way the rest of the way, as I came on here and talked about Saturday afternoon, they can very capably get to 6-6, at least finish with a non-losing record. I don't think they would accept a bowl berth by any means, but at least, you can take some pride in not going winless in the Big Ten, getting to a non-losing record. But starts with this Saturday, a trip to East Lansing. I mean, East Lansing has never been an easy place for Penn State. There have been much better Penn State teams than this that have gone to East Lansing and lost to Michigan State teams that were not as good as them. That said, I might argue that Michigan State's the worst team in the Big Ten right now. In this current moment, it's probably them or Purdue. Yeah. They are bad. They're very bad. They don't know. You don't know who's going to be a quarterback for them. I mean, obviously with Aiden Childs, there was a player who there was a lot of excitement around when he came to East Lansing. Followed Jonathan Smith here. Things have not really panned out for him. So between injury and poor performance, you don't know who's going to be at quarterback for the Spartans. Regardless, this is a game that it feels like this should be. I mean, I think you could probably argue the Indiana game was the get up off the mat game for Penn State. But this is one where they should get up off the mat in terms of winning and finally getting that first Big Ten win of the year.
Yeah, and I mean the people are asking Marty. Whoa! People are asking Marty, is this the best 3-6 team in college football history? Talent
on the roster wise, it legitimately might be.
Talent on the roster wise, it might be. You look at the losses. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of their 6 losses are by one score or less. I mean, now in all seriousness, excuse me, good performance last week against Indiana. I know I wasn't on to talk about that game, but a good performance against Indiana. And, I'm going to be people have to put up with the mess in the background. I wasn't able to talk about the last one. Impressive performance despite not coming out on top. If they play like that, they'll win out. There's no doubt in my mind. But as I also said to you as we were talking about that game through text, they could win out, or this could be a loss that sends them spiraling for a second time, and then they lose out. Either way, I think that was – you can argue that was their single best performance of the season in any game.
Yeah, I would, because I think against Oregon, I mean, I understand the argument that, they took Oregon to double overtime, had to lead in overtime. But to me, it's twofold. One, I think Indiana, obviously Indiana proved on the field they're a better team than Oregon. And two, Penn State was better than Indiana on Saturday.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think Indiana was a better team.
They were. Turnovers killed them. Even with that drive at the end by Fernando Mendoza, turnovers killed them. They gave Indiana 10 points off a short field, especially that Katron Allen fumble before halftime. You take away either one of those turnovers, especially both, then Penn State probably wins that game potentially by double digits. Yeah. They were the better team from start to finish. I agree with you. I think that was their best performance of the season.
And then going into this week, you said a lot about it. This Michigan State team may be the worst team in the Big Ten, especially since Wisconsin has been playing some considerably good football the last few weeks, despite their record. And Purdue is the only other team that really has an argument in that conversation. But even the Boilermakers in their losses this year have mostly been a competitive team. Michigan State, on the other hand, outside of a loss last time out to Minnesota, all 5 of their 6 losses have come by 11 points or more this season. The Jonathan Smith tenure has not worked out. He's on the hot seat. And really, I think this is a game that, could potentially be Jonathan Smith's last game as the head coach of the Spartans, depending on how it goes. You talked about the quarterback situation. Aiden Childs, who they thought was going to be their quarterback of the future, he got benched for see if I can pronounce this time. Alessio Miljevic, who was pretty good against Minnesota, 20 for 28, 311 and a touchdown. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Miljevic plays this week against Penn State, a team that has, been has given up quite a few big chunk plays, especially through the air this year. So I think that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, this is a game going into it. I generally like Penn State, but definitely not one that I'm going to rule out Michigan State of pulling off a win here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's no reason Penn State shouldn't win this game, short of maybe the fact the game's in East Lansing. But again, I'm not going to roll the Spartans out either, and that has more to do with Penn State than it does Michigan State. I mean, you hit the nail on the head with Jonathan Smith. That this could be his last stand, which is wild. This early into his tenure, especially with how well he did it at Oregon State. But you mentioned with the passing game and the potential big plays, got something Penn State has struggled with this year. I think one player to watch for certain with that on Saturday is going to be Nick Marsh. The star sophomore wide receiver for Michigan State. I mean, that's a name that if you're a Penn State fan, it probably sounds familiar from the recruiting days. That was a guy that, it looked like the Nittany Lions were going to get, and they didn't. And, it just kind of makes you wonder where this team might be at if Nick Marsh would have chose Penn State out of high school and if they would have had Nick Marsh last year in the Orange Bowl. But anyway, that's definitely going to be one to watch because Marsh, I mean, even as much as Michigan State has struggled, still one of the top receivers in the Big Ten. 554 yards this year, averaging 12 yards a catch, 5 scores. He's a big play guy. I mean, the Spartans have some talent at receiver. Omar Kelly's another fine receiver, averaging 14 yards a catch with the longest 75, 529 yards total. So this is something where Penn State secondary doesn't button down, which is something they've struggled to do this year, regardless of who's throwing the ball for the Spartans. There could be some plays there to be made just because of the receiving core that Michigan State has, because it is quietly a strong receiving core.
It is. It really is. I mean, you look beyond Nick Marsh. Amari Kelly has 529 yards on 38 receptions and a touchdown. Krishan McCray, 16 for 231 and a touchdown. And then tight end Jack Villan is a solid all-around tight end as well. So definitely a receiving core that Penn State's going to have to be very careful about on Saturday. And then they have a good stable running backs led by Mekhi Frazier, 108 carries for 493 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Elijah Tua-Taliver, who has 37 carries for 219 yards and a touchdown. The problem for the Spartans is their offensive line is putrid. They can't run block. They can't pass block. They've given up 30 sacks this season. Minnesota had like 6 or 7 in the last game. Which this could be a game that Penn State's defensive line finally breaks out because the Nittany Lions have not really been able to get a ton of sacks this season. So perhaps we see some stat padding in that category this weekend for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think part of that, too, is you look at Penn State's defensive line coming off of their best game of the season, and you're also hopeful you have Chaz Coleman back this weekend for missing last Saturday with an illness. So I think this is definitely a game, as you mentioned, where this defensive line can have a big game again against a porous Michigan State offensive line. I think there's a lot of matchups in this game that favor Penn State, maybe none bigger than that one. If you can get the denied Dennis Sutton and the Zane Durant against Indiana, even, I thought Xavier Gilliam, Yvonne Kemajo were two young guys who had really strong performances. Zariah Fisher played a good game. If you can get that from those guys again and then also throw Chaz Coleman back into the mix, I think you're going to feel pretty good about your defensive line going up against Michigan State's offensive line on Saturday. And hopefully that can also help things a bit with the linebackers, because the linebackers, as we've talked about ad nauseum this year, have really struggled, especially post Tony Rojas injury. But I don't think it's a coincidence that last week when the defensive line played their best game of the year, the linebackers as a whole looked much better. So, if you can get the defensive line to play that way again, not allow Michigan State blockers to get to that second level as often with as much ease. That's going to free up your Maury Campbells, your Dom DeLucas. I'm hoping to continue, to see more of Keon Wiley and Alex Tash as we have this past Saturday and against Ohio State as well. Keep playing those young guys. I know we came on here on Saturday and I talked about it when I was flying solo. You don't know who on this roster is going to be here next year, especially if James Franklin does surface as a Power 4 head coach, which it seems if he wants to, he's going to be able to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you need to, as a coaching staff, you need to – this is your job till it's not your job, right? So these young guys, you want to keep bringing them along, keep setting them up for success for next year. And looking at it as a Penn State fan, those young linebackers in particular, Alex Tash, Keon Wiley, you're talking about a pair of kids, Pennsylvania natives, grew up Penn State fans. You'd like to think that unless they really fumble the coaching hire, those are the kind of guys that are going to probably stick around regardless. But yeah, again, I think Penn State's defensive line will be in a very advantageous position against the Spartans' offensive line this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said there. And the other thing I think that is going to benefit Penn State in this game is we talk about it quite a bit, the quit factor with Michigan State.
Yes.
I don't know how much this Michigan State team has left in them. This season's been a disaster for them. They almost had a win at Minnesota 2 weeks ago and lost it. They gave the lead with under 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. They had the lead with less than 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Gave up the tying score, went into overtime, and then lost the game in overtime. That was the most competitive they've played in conference play all season, and it didn't matter. I mean, I'm sure, and people can't say the same thing about Penn State right now, but last week's Penn State was obviously not a team that quit last week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get the sense that they're just going to quit now because last week.
Either. I think too, the last 3 weeks were prime lay down, die, and quit opportunities for Penn State. And they,
right.
On the road against the top 20 Iowa team at night, at number 1 Ohio State, home against number 2 Indiana, and they fought hard. I mean, they should have won 2 of those 3 games if we're being honest with ourselves. So, yeah, I think that's a great point where you look at Michigan State, it looks like a team that's ready to check out on the season. And to Penn State's credit, I think this goes back to one of the things we always said that James Franklin was so good at, was cultivating that culture, getting that buy-in. You're seeing it shine through with, again, them should have beaten Iowa, playing really hard against Ohio State and giving them problems for 3 quarters, should have beaten Indiana. You're seeing a team that has every reason in the world to lay down and die, not lay down and die. So I agree that could be a big factor on Saturday.
Any concerns on your end about I mean, do you have any concerns about how Penn State's offense matches up against this Michigan State defense? I don't think it's that great of a defense. Minnesota's offense struggled a bit, but the Minnesota offense has struggled quite a bit this year in general. With Penn State's wide receivers, nothing's going to be easy, but I think this is still an offense that should be able to move the ball on the Spartans quite a bit in this game.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Michigan State's defense, they rank 116th nationally in scoring defense, giving up 31.4 points per game. It's not even that. If you look at some of the points, they give up 40 points to Boston College.
Yeah.
And Boston College is averaging 23.7 points per game. And that includes them hanging 66 on Fordham.
And another team that's about to fire their head coach.
Yeah, you take out the Fordham game, and Boston College is averaging under 20 points per game, doesn't have a win, and they're about to fire Bill O'Brien. So the fact they gave up 40 to that team, I'm with you. I think the offense, unless they get in their own way, turnovers, penalties, Andy Koldenicki being a dummy, whatever it may be, I don't see a way they're not successful on Saturday, especially because I think the offensive line, really quietly has played some really strong football in recent weeks. I think Vega Ione, it's not going to get recognized because of the way this season's gone, but Vega Ione is playing some awesome football guard right now. I feel like Nolan Rucci's slowly rounding back into the guy we saw in the postseason last year. Mm-hmm. Drew Shelton's been fine. So this offensive line is finally playing some good football. So I think if that continues on Saturday, and again, you mentioned the quit factor, man. If you're Michigan State and you get down early, and Penn State's pushing you around. I mean, I get both of you 3-6. You're both 6 in the Big Ten. But where's that incentive to just not say, you know what, screw this, we're done, and just lay down and die? So, yeah, I'm with you. I think offensively, I'm going to be more intrigued to continue to watch Ethan Grunkemeyer. I know we came on the Northwestern game, and we both said, like, he's going to have his moments. He's very raw. The kid's got some tools, and he keeps getting better. And, I mean, that game against Indiana, that was the best game of Penn State quarterbacks played probably since Drew Aller against USC last year.
Yeah.
And the one thing with Grunkemeyer, and I'd said this going back to the Iowa game, and it was really on display against Indiana, he's not afraid to step up in the pocket, trust his arm, trust his ability, throw the ball down the field, give his receivers a chance. Now, it's burnt him at times, some of it due to the play of the receivers. I think of at least 2 interceptions he has because the ball clanked off the receiver's hands and deflected up in the air and wound up getting intercepted, but you're not going to put that on the quarterback. So I'm going to be very intrigued to continue to watch Ethan Grunkemeyer on Saturday. I think it'll be, it's going to be exciting also to see him play against a defense that's not one of the top 5 defenses in the country. I mean, you went to Iowa, and again, Kinnick Knight's a monster in itself, and then you go to Ohio State and they come home against Indiana, and all 3 of them rank in the top 5 nationally in scoring defense. All 3 are in the top 10 nationally in total defense, pressure rate, chaos rate, all of that stuff. So you're literally – your first 8 starts were against 3 of the best defenses in the country, 2 of which are national championship contenders, and you still did some really good things, including this most recent game against Indiana. So I'm very excited to see what Ethan Grunkemeyer looks like against the defense that's not just loaded with NFL talent at every level like the past 3 weeks have been.
Yeah, this should be a cakewalk for him this week, right?
I think so.
And the other thing with Ethan is, and I was talking about this with our good buddy Greg before we jumped on. Even if he's not the quarterback at Penn State next year, Ethan has got a really good chance to get paid this offseason to be somebody else's starting quarterback if he continues to play well down the stretch here. So these next 3 games for him are going to be really, really important for his future, whether it's at Penn State or elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, Ethan Grunkemeyer, with what he's put on tape the last 3 weeks, is already setting himself up to, be in pretty good shape financially next year. And these next 3 games are just going to be a further audition for that. Continue to put it on tape, continue to position yourself to, rather it's staying at Penn State, rather it's going into the portal, not just being positioned to lock down a starting job somewhere, but to get paid for it. I mean, I'm very confident at this point. I know there were some grumblings, early in the year, before the season went off the tracks. This offseason, do they look to the portal? What do they do at quarterback? I mean, I'm very confident with what he's shown. If Drew Aller still gets hurt, but the team doesn't collapse and James Franklin's still here, he would have locked down the starting job for next year at this point. He's done. So he's continuing to play for that payday, for that opportunity to prove himself, whether it's to the new staff here, whoever that ends up being, or elsewhere.
Yeah, I 100% agree. He has shown enough on film at this point that would give me the confidence in him for being a starting quarterback at the Power 4 level next season, whether that's here with Penn State or wherever it may be. There's going to be plenty of schools that need a quarterback this offseason, and he's going to have plenty of suitors if he does enter the transfer portal. And going off that, even it'll be interesting because he didn't really have a recruitment that would set up a ton of schools that have previous relationships with him, because Penn State was in on him so early in the process before a lot of other major programs got involved that it was really just Penn State and a handful of low to mid Power 4 schools that really were his big offers at the time. So it'll be really interesting to see where he goes if he does enter the transfer portal and isn't in any line in 2026. Yeah,
I mean, it was a recruitment that in a lot of ways very similar to Drew Aller, where Penn State was in on him early, he committed. Both were Brad Mendelar guys, and that probably cut down on the offers he got. It wasn't quite the same as Drew because in the end, some of the big guys tried to make a run at Drew, Ohio State included, and he shunned them. But yeah, I think it was a very similar recruitment where, and again, it's just kind of ironic that they're both from the Columbus area, both had the same quarterback coach in high school, where Penn State got in early, made that relationship, got him on board, and that kept a lot of other schools from going after him. And part of that, too, for anyone who follows high school recruiting, you know that those quarterback dominoes tend to fall in a hurry, too, right? Once one quarterback's off the board, the dominoes start to fall. So quarterback is a bit different, where it's not like a lot of other positions where if that happens, a guy commits early and a school gets in on him, they start to blow up, people circle back.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, once you've got your quarterback, that's not going to happen because you don't want to run the risk of going after that kid, not getting him to flip or whatever it may be, and then you anger the quarterback you have, so maybe they start to look around. So quarterback recruiting is a lot different than every other position, so that's also a factor there as well.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
But, no, I think, I've said, this is a game the Nittany Lions definitely should win.
Yep.
We'll get into predictions here in a second, and then we can, wrap this thing up for a few minutes doing some updates on the coaching search. But, yeah, I think they're going to find a way to pull this out. And maybe I shouldn't say find a way because it makes it sound like they have to fight and claw. And I think last I saw they were 7-point favorites. I would pick them
7.5.
7.5. I'd still pick them to cover that. I think they win this thing somewhere in the neighborhood of like 31-17, 30-14. I don't see it there with Michigan State. Again, like I said, I think this is the worst team in the Big Ten right now. And I get Penn State stinks. They're 3-6. They haven't won a conference game. But the last 3 weeks has been a murderer's row of a schedule. They didn't lay down and die. They fought hard. They should have won 2 of the 3, right? And this is a team that is, you could argue, 5 or 6 plays away from coming into this thing at 8-1 with a win over a top 5 Indiana, a win over a top 5 Oregon, a win over a top 20 Iowa, and in the discussion for a first-round bye in the playoffs. So, again, the talent's there. I thought there was times against UCLA where it looked like the quit watch was on a little bit, but outside of that, they've never laid down and died. They haven't quit all year. I don't think it starts now. So I think Penn State pulls it out. So I'll say 31-17. I think Ethan Grunkemeyer has another big game offensively, and I think defensively this is a game where Dennis Sutton could really he could really go off on the Spartan offensive line because they're not very good. And Dennis Sutton dipped at times this year, but he was really good against Oregon. He was really good last week. If he can finish the season strong, he's still going to set himself up to be a top 50 pick in April. I think Dennis Sutton goes off and leads his defense.
I can't believe we talked about this entire game for 22 minutes and we still haven't discussed the most important aspect of this game.
We didn't. The
beautiful Land Grant trophy that is on the line, laser show and all. But yeah, no, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I think Penn State's offense is going to come out in an onslaught in this game. I'm predicting Penn State 41 points. 41. Michigan State 17. I think Ethan Grunkemeyer in the offense has a big day and a big second half, and has a feel-good moment in this one, and they need a feel-good moment after the last month or so. Give me Penn State 41-17.
Yeah, that would be fun. And this theme has not been fun very much lately. It was fun for much of the game last week, up until the last drive when it was the most Penn State loss imaginable. But it was fun. For 59 minutes, Penn State football was finally fun again. So that was good to see. But yeah, here for these last few minutes, we'll wrap it up, touching base on the coaching search. I mean, this has been an evolving thing. We've mentioned for a few weeks now on here, and as I mentioned on Saturday, I mentioned it last week, it's been reported by some of the national guys. Pete Thamel's been on this. I think Russo, someone at The Athletic has I think it's been around Russo. The Mike Elko smoke. I mean, obviously that's a big swing for Pat Kraft, but that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and probably rightfully so, would immediately shut that one down. But Elko's from New Jersey. His wife is from the outside of Philadelphia. Most of their family still lives in Eastern Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. I think culturally, that sort of thing, he's a much better fit at Penn State than Texas A&M. That said, you're Texas A&M. You've probably got more money than anybody in the country. So, if it's a money thing, there's no way Penn State's ever going to outbid them. Also, if you're Penn State, do you really want to run the risk of rating out a coach who might be playing into January? Even if you think there's a chance you could land him. And as we've said here before, it's not even the National Signing Day aspect of it, because that really, if you go back and look at the data of the portal era, coaches who get hired. So, hey, 2027 is your first year, or 2026, excuse me, is your first year on the job, and you get hired, tail into 2025, that first portal class has proven to be much more important to them than that first recruiting class. Right. So it's January 3rd, I think it is, when the portal opens up. And there's only one portal window now too, which is important here. So I think that's when you want your coach in place by more. You'd love to have a coach in place by National Signing Day, but by portal window openings, when you really want your coach. Like I said, Elko is the big name that continues to float out there. I'm looking now, the betting odds, the top four, Eli Drinkowitz, which I have seen the last few days, and that's a name we've mentioned before as well, has risen to be by a pretty large margin, the odds-on betting favorite at this point, followed by Brent Key, then Mike Elko, then Brian Hartline. Hartline, start with him because I think he's the least likely by far. I don't see Pat Kraft hiring a guy without Power 4 head coaching experience unless he strikes out on a lot of guys, which I don't think is going to happen. They're going to hit on one of these top 4, 5, 6 targets. Brent Key, you and I have talked about him. You formerly covered Georgia Tech, so you know Key a little bit better than I do, obviously. But you and I agreed the dude's relentless in recruiting and that sort of thing. If you gave him Penn State's facilities and resources, I think he could be a real winner here. And Drinkowitz is a guy who, for probably a week or two now, I've said if I had gun to my head, I'd probably say it's Drinkowitz, just because he checks a lot of the boxes Pat Kraft's looking for. Power 4 head coaching experience. You bring in your own offensive identity, which is good because that's something that's been sorely lacking for a long time now. And now that Missouri is out of the playoff with 3 losses, in theory, you could have Drinkowitz in place probably before National Signing Day if you wanted. So I'll shut up here in a second and let you talk on it. But yeah, Drinkowitz, Key, Elko, Hartline, the top 4 betting favorites right now. I don't think it's going to be Hartline. I think in a dream scenario, if Pat Kraft could handpick his guy, it'd be Elko. I think Drinkowitz and Key are more likely between the two. And if I had to pick between the two, I think it'll wind up being Drinkowitz, which I know our friend Clay is not going to agree with it, but I think Drinkowitz would be a very strong hire.
Yeah, no, I do think that I agree with the aspect that, Elko is the dream hire for Pat Kraft. And I think for a lot of Penn State fans, Elko would be a dream hire, as would, Kalen DeBoer, whose name has popped up throughout this coaching search. Obviously, long shot that DeBoer or Elko would ever happen. Maybe if Alabama were to lose to Oklahoma this weekend, that would maybe set some things in motion that could eventually lead to that. But it's still very doubtful. I think Alabama's going to be competing for a national championship this year. And A&M could be competing in a semifinal or a final or a national championship game themselves. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I agree that it seems likely that as we stand here today, that Drinkowitz is the most likely candidate to land the job, which I think a lot of Penn State fans would be happy with it. I think there'd be a segment of the fan base, like our friend Clay, who is not sold on the hire, that would fear a lot of the same Franklin issues popping up under Drinkowitz, which is fair. They do share a lot of similarities in that regard. But he has shown the ability to elevate programs at each step he's taken in his career, and Penn State would be the next logical step. If it's not Penn State, maybe it's Florida. But no matter where it is, I think there's a very good chance that Eli Drinkowitz is wearing different colors. He's going to be wearing blue of some sort, in my opinion, come January. It's just a matter of, is it Florida blue or is it Penn State blue?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I will say, too, with Drinkowitz here before we wrap it up, I understand people's reservations with his record against top 25 opponents, whatever it may be. My counter to that would be it's a lot easier to beat ranked teams with the resources you'll have at Penn State than at Missouri. And now Missouri's come a long way in recent years, and they were really out in the forefront of NIL. But in the past few years, everyone else around them has gotten their NIL together. Missouri's recruiting and transfer portal classes have definitely dipped. And I think that's not an Eli Drinkowitz thing. I think it's a Missouri thing. And I do think, you mentioned Drinkowitz being somewhere other than Missouri next year, probably by January 1st. I think part of that is he knows he's hit his ceiling at Missouri. I think if Eli Drinkowitz would go to Penn State, for example, and do exactly what he's done at Missouri, the ceiling is automatically higher because the ceiling of the program is higher. And thing is, too, people point at the top 25 thing with Drinkowitz. My argument also to that would be how many times, if ever, did he face one of those teams where Missouri was not even the more talented team, but actually on a level playing field in terms of talent. This year against Vanderbilt, which is a game they probably would have won had Bo Prabula not had his ankle explode, and that's probably about it. And again, that's a game that without injury, they most likely win. Even with Bo Prabula getting hurt, they still almost pulled it out. So that would be my two main counters of that one.
Yeah, no, and I think those are both very fair counters to that argument. I also agree that I don't think Pat Crowder is going to hire a head coach who is, not hasn't been a head coach before at the Power 4 level. It's just too much of a risk at what the program is right now.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it is, too, you don't fire James Franklin to go hire a coordinator. This isn't – if let's say Florida or a school of that nature would go the coordinator route, that's different because of what they're coming off of, right? It would be the only time I can ever think of where a school of this caliber moved on from a head coach who was winning, and they weren't winning nearly at the caliber James was, hired a coordinator and wasn't an utter disaster, was when Texas got Sark. But that was a lot different too, because Sark had been a power conference coach. And if not for some demons he'd battled earlier in his life, I think Sark he might still be at USC.
Right.
I think he would have killed it there if it wouldn't have been some personal demons that he had to overcome. So that was a completely different situation.
Agreed. It's going to be interesting. My ultimate view on this is if it's going to be Drink, it'll be within the next couple weeks here.
I would think if it's Drinkowitz, I'd be willing to bet that, by that Monday or Tuesday after Thanksgiving, even if it's not official, you're gonna know, right? You're gonna have, rather it's Thamel or Dellinger or whoever is gonna have the according to sources, Penn State has targeted Eli Drinkowitz as the next head coach, and that's agent talk for, hey, we're dotting I's and crossing T's, and this will be official. I think if it's Drinkowitz, you have him in place. Like I said, probably and that's what it said. That signing day is that Wednesday. Last game of the season, Saturday, November 30th. Signing day is Wednesday the 3rd. It's going to be a hectic 72 hours in there, but I would think if it's going to be Drinkowitz, you have him in place by the 3rd to try and do anything you can to salvage this recruiting class.
Especially because if now maybe Drinkowitz is a guy that is I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but maybe he's one of those guys that if he goes to another school, he's going to be like, hey, I'm not going to try to poach any of the recruiting class.
I would hope he would, because you're just doing your job.
Right. But maybe he's the guy who says, I'm not going to poach. He's going to poach the roster wherever he goes. But on the other hand, you would think because of that quick turnaround, you would want to have things in motion that you can sell quickly.
I agree.
If this goes into early mid-December, I think you're looking at the field that compared to Drinkowitz.
I agree. I think if it's going to be Drinkowitz, this is wrapped up probably by the end of the first full week of December. If it goes further than that, and if you're a Penn State fan and if it goes further than that, you probably shouldn't feel pessimistic, because to me that tells me Pat Kraft is very confident in landing a coach who's coaching in the college football playoff.
Agreed.
That's the only way. I don't see this thing wrapped up by the end of that first conference championship weekend or shortly thereafter. So, but I think that'll do it for tonight. Saturday 3:30, big time on CBS. Man, I'm sure these are the kind of matchups CBS was dreaming of when they didn't renew their SEC contract and signed on with the Big Ten instead. 3-6 Penn State, 3-6 Michigan State from the always lovely East Lansing, Michigan. in middle of November. Somebody's got to win a Big Ten game. I don't know if it's going to be the Spartans. I don't know if it's going to be the Nittany Lions, but somebody's winning a Big Ten game on Saturday afternoon. If it's not the Spartans, as we said earlier, this might be it for Jonathan Smith. But yeah, we will. I'm not sure if we'll be with you Saturday or not, Dylan. I know I'll be wrapped up with high school football on my end. If we don't talk to you guys Saturday, we will try and get to you at some point, maybe Sunday for a game recap.
Yeah.
If not, we'll see you next week when we come together to get ready to preview Penn State's matchup against Nebraska, and one that'll have its own fun storylines there. But as always, for Dylan, I'm Marty. Thanks for being here. As always, make sure you like, subscribe, follow the channel, give us your super chats, your super likes, all that good stuff. We will talk soon. By next time we talk, hopefully the Nittany Lions have a Big Ten win, and maybe we'll have some more coaching news to delve into as well. But if not, we'll be here to continue to talk about what we have all year, yet another conference loss and a very disappointing season. Ugh.